Hello everyone, I hope you're all keeping well, healthy and happy. This is a quick video on the investigation that was carried out by the Times newspaper recently, detailing the fact that there had been mass child sexual exploitation occurring in the city of Glasgow in Scotland, in this area called Govan Hill. For those of you that don't know, local residents in that area have been complaining for approximately 10 years about this being a real issue, and the police have totally ignored it. Now, publicly they're stating that they knew nothing about the fact that this was happening in the city, right? But I can tell you, and I know this is anecdotal, but let me tell you that insofar as what I know from the people that are in that area, this has been reported to the police numerous times. And yet, nothing's been done about it. Now, this has some very, very strong parallels to what we saw happen in Rotherham, and in Manchester, and in Birmingham, and in Leeds, and many other cities and places, in which we saw the so-called grooming gangs, which are basically rape gangs, carry out these heinous actions. And we saw that the police totally ignored it. We saw that the local government ignored it. The local councillors ignored it. Everyone basically ignored it, including the national government. Well, it turns out that the same thing's happening with Glasgow. In that particular area, the police ignored it, and the local council ignored it, and so did the Scottish government. Right? Everyone's ignored the problem. And what's fascinating is that that area falls under the jurisdiction of the First Minister for Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. That is her constituency. So I'm sure that people have brought it to our attention that this was going on. But obviously, in the interests of this cult of multiculturalism, of cultural sensitivities, she chose not to look into it. And Police Scotland obviously chose not to look into this problem. And what makes me really angry is that they put these cultural sensitivities above the concerns that any decent human beings, any moral human being, should have for children. So, it's astounding. It's absolutely astounding. Now, before people misunderstand me with regards to many things that I'm saying here, the fact of the matter is that multiculturalism, as defined by the Fabian Society, and you'll see how this is relevant in a second, has to do with the fact that those entering into a country or migrating into a country do not have to assimilate. That is to say, they don't have to adopt Western values. Okay? That they, in point of fact, may not even have to adhere to the laws of that country, even though that is, and that should be, a requisite for anyone looking to come into a host country, wouldn't you see? But of course, again, this cult of multiculturalism allows these things to keep happening. This was, in this particular case, in terms of what the Times newspaper uncovered, this was prevalent in the Roma community. But it's not isolated to just the Roma community. A few weeks ago I was talking about the fact that these Islamist rape gangs, which had operated in these cities that we spoke about, were also operational in Glasgow. Now, here's the problem with all of this when it comes to Police Scotland. That is the police force in Scotland, which is now federalised thanks to the Scottish National Party. That is to say, the party of the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. Again, right, we keep seeing this. The police in Scotland refused to do anything about either of these issues. Meanwhile, they are busy, as I've pointed out before many, many times, they're busy arresting people for tweets. Tweets that could be considered to be, subjectively by many people, hate speech. There is no objective way to define hate speech, by the way. But apparently Police Scotland think it's a good idea to spend their time and their resources chasing people down and hindering their free speech, their right to free speech, instead of dealing with rape gangs that are raping children. They are putting the safety and security of children at risk. That's something to think about. And this is a militarized police force, of course, so if you say anything that goes against this radical leftist opinion, which the politicians hold, who are in power, since power is the only thing that matters to radical leftists, well, you can get put in jail. You can get thrown in jail. Recently, a guy got sent to prison by the court system, and he was arrested by the police for staring at someone. I'm not making this up. This is actually deadly, truly serious. YouTuber Goodfella did a video on this. A guy was sent to jail in Scotland for staring through a window at someone. I don't know what to say to this. Right? Those things rank as crimes. To speak out about something is to be criminal, and yet these rapists are allowed to roam free? What the hell is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. For those of you that don't understand this, the Scottish National Party, the SNP, who are in power in Scotland, got into power because they stole the leftist ground from the Labour Party in Scotland. That is what happened. The SNP, the Scottish National Party, is about as national as KFC. They adopted these tenets of international communism. They became more left-leaning than the most radical left-leaning people in Labour. Which is why you're seeing them implement these policies, like the name child policy, which there was a public outcry over. And it's also why they've federalised the police force, centralising that power, which is not good in terms of civil rights. And they've also spouted a whole lot of rhetoric that sounds like it could have come from the mouth of Joe Stalin. And this area, as I say, is under the jurisdiction, it's the constituency of Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister. She's totally ignored the problem. Utterly. And the police have totally ignored the problem. And the children suffer as a result of this, obviously. I mean, I don't know what to say to this madness. I really don't. And they're trying their best to stifle true, honest debate about these things. If you talk about any of this, you're branded as a racist or an Islamophobe when it comes to these Islamist rape gangs. Or, in other instances, they'll call you a xenophobe. I mean, it's ludicrous. The amount of nonsense that is going on here. The amount of evil that is actually being perpetrated by these politicians and governments. You see, at some point we're going to have to acknowledge the fact that governments do not best represent the interests of the people, particularly these hard leftist, totalitarian, authoritarian governments. It's a very, very dangerous thing that's happening right now, which is the curtailing of free speech. Whether it's on social media platforms, that's something else that is very, very serious, where Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are all doing their best to shut people up. Whether it's the political arena, whether it's just everyday speech, right? People are being thought policed. There are such things as thought crimes now for merely airing grievances against the centralized governmental powers. How long do we allow this to continue happening? That is my question. How long do we tolerate immorality in the truest sense of the word that perpetrates violence against the citizens of a country and the children of those citizens? How long do we keep tolerating that? But people keep falling for the lies. Because Nicola Sturgeon is a great prevaricator. She obfuscates everything. And she's just one example of this, by the way. The SNP are rife with this problem, as are the Labour Party, as are the Conservative Party. They do not represent the interests of the people. I wish they did. But more than that, these people are liars in a great many ways. And still, people keep voting for them in mass numbers. Take a look. The proof's in the pudding. The SNP government got elected, didn't they? Why do morons out there keep falling for this nonsense? Do you want to live under the same system as the former USSR? I'm just curious about that. Do you actually want that? Do you want to live under communism? Do you want to live in a country in which crime gangs and rape gangs are allowed to proliferate without any checks and balances? When are we going to start to wake up and use our sense, our logic, our ability to think critically about what is going on in society? When are people going to do that? I regret to say it might be never. And if it does happen, it might be too late. And it's extraordinarily heartbreaking to see this happen right across the country. Not just in Scotland, but the entirety of the UK. Take a look at the surge in support that the hard left is seeing in England. It's the same problem. You've got lunatics like Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell trumpeting the same things, the same ideals, right out of the Fabian playbook. And people keep wanting to vote for them. These young people that don't have a brain cell in their brains because they've been so heavily indoctrinated by the school systems and the university systems think it's a good idea. Because in their lifetimes they haven't seen what communism, true communism, when it's implemented, does to a country, to its people. They haven't seen it. They haven't seen the death tolls. They haven't seen the suffering it causes. And they keep these same people who support this nonsense, every time anyone brings it up, bury their heads in the sand. I get criticised by those on the hard left and the far left for talking about these things. Well, if I don't talk about them, they're not certainly going to talk about them, are they? They'd much rather protect the perpetrators. It's insane. It's insane that we are living in these times. I honestly feel like I'm in the middle of an insane asylum. Anyway, I'm going to leave this video at this point because I am enraged. I'm too enraged. And I can't see the situation getting any better unless people start waking up to reality. Okay, unless people start choosing to stand up for their right to free speech, to say things that are necessary, to say those things that need to be said, and not just conform like sheep to the system. Anyway, take good care of yourselves, and God bless every one of you. Thanks for watching.